The 2025 NFL draft didn't go the way that we wanted it to, of course, but it's on the 2026 now, and I have two prospects to keep your eyes on in the upcoming season. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire and site expert at Who Dat Dish. Woo! I'm excited, guys. This is an episode I've been wanting to do all week, and I felt like it was a Friday evening episode. So thank you for joining me live. Thank you for joining me afterwards. I'm excited for all of it. You know what I kind of thought about? I probably shouldn't have said I'm excited, but we wrap up today's show with actually some pretty bad news that FAMU is losing their great pitcher, Caleb Granger. But other than that, I promise today is a very upbeat and joyful show. I don't care what happened in the 2025 NFL draft any longer. It no longer matters. It is what it is at this point, and now we're turning our attention to 2026. But I'm not telling you what to look for in April. I'm not even telling you what to look for in February. I'm focusing on the 2025 season. I'm focusing on August. I'm focusing on September all the way to December. These are two players out of the MEAC that, quite frankly, I love and I've had attention on for the last couple of years. It's Erick Hunter and Edgerrin James. In segment 2, we'll look at Edgerrin James, we'll look at Erick Hunter's usage and why Morgan State should consider and not consider changing their best defensive player's position in 2025. But one thing that's special about 2025 is if you're like me, you've been waiting for the Edgerrin James show since he stepped foot on Howard's campus. And now this should be the season that we finally get it. That's what I'm extremely excited about because he came in as a freshman and let's not fake it. His last name is James. His dad is Edgerrin James. So there's a level of excitement that comes with that initially off the rip. But I think that you get your foot through the door with that. But now you got to show something else. And he did his freshman year in a very small sample size. Howard's always had running backs. They've had Ian Wheeler. They've had Jared Hunter. So it's difficult to say that this was Edgerrin James' show at any point until this year. His freshman year, he had 5.4 yards per carry on just 75 carries. So that only totaled out to 406. But at the end of the day, if you're talking about a player who has limited sample size, you should look at what he does with the opportunities that he's given. If a player has a limited sample size, which is what he got with just 75 carries, I'm not looking at the 406 yards and saying, that's nothing. Yes, it's a low amount because he got a low amount of carries, but he had 5.4 per pop. Now, that's something I can get behind. So immediately, I'm looking at this saying, okay, all that stuff about his dad goes out the window. It's now about Edgerrin. His sophomore year rolls around, and that's when he gets more carries, but it's still not the Edgerrin James show. He gets 111 carries that year, and he ends up upping his yards per carry. So you go from 75 to crossing the century mark, and now you go from 5.4 yards per carry to 5.6 yards per carry. That's always a positive attribute. No matter what you're talking about, if I give you more work and you produce at a higher rate, I'm excited about that, which is what makes 2024 so confusing. It makes it so confusing. Now, once again, you had Jared Hunter, you had Ian Wheeler. It's very difficult to say we're going to hand over the keys to Ian Wheeler, or excuse me, to Edgerrin James. But that's not here anymore. These blockades aren't there. Ian Wheeler left 2 years ago. Jared Hunter left this past season. So I'm no longer looking at, well, he got to fight to get past Hunter. I understand and I respect Howard for saying, no, we're going to wait. But in general, Howard's offensive philosophy was terrible in 2024, in my opinion. They leaned way too much on their quarterback. I understand that Scroggins, yeah, he could run the football. So maybe you took some carries away from your running backs to allow him to run. But in general, I just thought there was way too much pressure on quarterback play. I did feel like they began to get down in points, and then you have to. But even at the beginning of games, Eden James and Jared Hunter were your most reliable weapons, and you just didn't use them. And the confusion around that, it kind of shows itself within Eden James stats too. After going up in carries his first to second year, he went down in carries. Naturally, he's going to go down in yards. He was no longer crossing the 100 carry threshold. One thing I'll say that is on him is, remember what I said about his freshman year? It's about the usage, or excuse me, it's about how you make use of your limited opportunities. So he goes 75 carries freshman year, 111 carries his sophomore year, and then his past season he had 97 carries. That's obviously a downgrade. That's obviously a drop down. That's less opportunities. But in this one, it was the first year that he didn't reach 5 yards a carry. In this season, it was the first time that he averaged 4.4. Like, you're looking at 5.4, 5.6, 4.4. So it's the first year that he dropped, first year that he didn't average 5. It's the first year that he just, it looked different opportunity wise. What that looked like or what that reason was, I don't know. But what I will say is, I thought that in general, Jared Hunter wasn't used appropriately. I just didn't like the way that Howard used their running backs, no matter who you're talking about, but especially Eden James, because I felt like coming off the year that he had, you kind of, to be honest, you kind of should have focused on him. And that's why I think that this year is special. And I know that may sound a little bit backwards, right? It may sound backwards to say Eden James took a step back in 2024. So I think he's going to take a huge step forward in 2025. But he's going to be the lead back. So this is the Eden James show. He'll get more carries. So his numbers should look better. But then secondly, if I'm Howard, I'm looking at the way I misused my running backs in 2024, and I'm doing a complete 180. So I'm thinking there's a good chance that the Bison say, we messed up so bad with our running backs last year. Let's make sure we lean into them in 2025. And that will benefit Eden James because he'll be the lead dog. He'll be the lead back, and he'll get more carries than he normally would have. So I'm excited about this. This is, for me, what I have been waiting for. It's like I said, I've been waiting on the Eden James show since his freshman year, since before he even took a carry at Howard, because of who his dad was. That got him in the door. That put his foot in the door, for me at least, in my attention. But it quickly went away. I quickly transferred that excitement because of the last name to excitement because of what I saw on the field. 5 yards a pop, consistently producing against P4 talent. I've liked what I've seen from Eden James since his freshman year, and I'm hoping that Howard leans more into the running game than they did last year. I was very frustrated with how they use their running backs. Now that it's the Eden James show, if they flip the script, he should get 160, 170 carries. He should be carrying the workload for Howard, and that's going to pay huge dividends. The one thing that I need from James, I say this, the one thing I need from him is or two things probably. One, I need you to go back to 5 yards a pop, especially if you're getting a higher workload. I would hope, because I don't know what we're talking. I don't know if we're talking about draft here. These are prospects to watch, but I try to shape my draft conversations around what I'm hearing in buzz, right? So I can't give you all of that right now. Right now, I'm only talking about the prospect. If you can average 5 yards a pop, 5.5 off of 170 carries, if you can get 1,000-yard season, we're talking about you a whole lot differently. The second thing that I really need from him, and that was the first thing I was going to mention, more touchdown production. And I think that should come with a higher workload, but still, I need more touchdowns out of Eden James. It's the one thing that he doesn't have that just blows you away. You know, it's kind of like, I was about to use a bad example, so never mind. But it's a situation where he had 2 touchdowns his first year, 2 his second year, and 3 last year. Yes, you saw an increase, but I'd really like to see that number at 7, 8 and above, right? 7, 8-ish, I'll accept. But if he can get to double-digit touchdowns, that'll be major. And I know I may be asking for a lot, but in an 11, 12 game season, and you hopefully being the key source of offense, I think that you could do it. I think it's definitely doable, and I would like to see him do it, man. This guy is he's so talented. You've seen it. He is so talented. I just need certain things to happen. He has to be given the ball more, and he also has to have more touchdown production. Those things go hand in hand, kind of, but not necessarily. One is coaching, giving the freaking ball. Then the second one is when you get the ball, do something with it. Anyway, we're going to push forward to another player, Erick Hunter, because I think that Hunter is dynamic. I think Hunter is special. But I also think that Hunter could get his position changed going into his last year at Morgan State. But why would you do that? Why wouldn't you do that? I have the case for both sides as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. Listen, I don't care if you're into HVAC, if you're into plumbing, if you're into electrical work. Supply House is the site made for all skilled trades. It's simple. It's a reliable way to get your products online, and their easy to use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help get you the job done correctly. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts and 40 of the top brands, you know you're going to get quality things delivered fast from coast to coast. So, if you need help with an order, don't worry about AI. Supply House offers expert support and it's going to make sure you're always talking to a real person. Now, if you're not technologically savvy like I'm not, you love talking to a real person. I need it. So, the free Trade Master program is going to give you free shipping, a dedicated phone line, and discounts on every order. If you want it, you got to go and join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked on HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked on NBA. The Rockets versus Warriors is tonight. That series may conclude, but whether or not it does, you can still go to Locked on NBA to get a recap on the first round of action. Now, as we continue rolling, Erick Hunter is a fantastic prospect who missed the entirety of last year, essentially. He only played 2 games. This is the thing, though. I think that there's a recency bias that always exists, of course. When you miss a year, you tend to cool off. People tend to forget about you, especially if you play a position like linebacker. And I think that that could have happened to Erick Hunter, but at least for my part, I'm not going to let it happen to Erick Hunter. This is a fantastic prospect. This is a fantastic player who will be the best player on this defense. He should be the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year. He was an impact player going into last year who everybody was excited about. He missed a season, and a year away can make people have amnesia. I get it. I get it, but I didn't forget because I spent all of last year waiting for Erick Hunter to return. And I don't think that Morgan State even quite understood the timeline from his injury on which he would return. So it was really crickets and it was hard to get information about what was going on with Hunter. He ended up coming back for 2 games last year, but that's not enough to take out a year of eligibility. So technically, he was supposed to be in last year's draft. Let's look at where he ranked going into the 2024 season. In our preseason top 25 or preseason top 10, I should say, he went ahead and ranked, or excuse me, in our preseason top 10. In our preseason top 10, Erick Hunter ended up ranking number 5. So he was a highly thought of prospect. I'm not changing that. That's not changing for me as we go into 2026, or excuse me, 2025, technically with the 2026 draft. I'm still having all eyes on Hunter. But here's the thing. I think that he may get his position changed. I think that there is a case to change his position. The question is, would Morgan State want to do it? That's the thing. Is one thing I messed up on probably like a minute ago is saying that Erick Hunter is a fantastic prospect, because I don't necessarily know how much I agree with the prospect part. Fantastic player, 1,000%. But there's great collegiate players who don't translate to the next level. There's great collegiate players who we don't even think are going to translate to the next level before they even enter the draft. I want to be very clear about that. Obviously, there's collegiate players who don't pan out, but I'm talking about guys who you're like, man, this guy had the most decorated career I've seen in the last decade, and he's a 5th-round pick. I think Nick Nash was the freaking Triple Crown winner. He had the most catches, receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns in the country, if I'm not mistaken. Undrafted. It doesn't always translate, and it's not always thought to translate. When it comes to Hunter, it kills me to say, because I think he's a great player. But at 210 pounds, I just don't see him as a great linebacker prospect. I don't think that he translates as a linebacker. I don't think that I would view him as a prospect highly. I just don't think that. I think that if you keep Hunter as a linebacker, things kind of change. So now the question becomes, if you're Morgan State, do I keep him at linebacker? Let's be very clear. Erick Hunter is a fantastic player, but if we're starting to talk about the 2026 NFL draft, which is kind of the framework, very softly, very loosely, but this is kind of the framework that we're looking at this conversation through, he's not going to be a linebacker at 210 pounds. He just isn't, right? I just I don't see that in his future. So now either you put weight on him or you change his position. I was in this situation not that long ago. It was actually kind of a long time ago. It was when I was in high school, my senior year, right? Um, my senior year of high school, I had a friend who was a defensive end the entire time that we were in high school. He got offers from D1 programs as a defensive end, but there was a belief that he was a little light to be a DN at the next level. So what do the coaches do? Honorably, I get it. They say we're going to put him at linebacker because we think that's where he'll be best suited at the next level. You're trying something. I get it. And I actually think it's a very smart move to make for his future. I understood it then. I didn't understand it then because it meant I was going to be a backup. But I get it now. I even got it then at the time. I wasn't that good. So I didn't have the room to sit here and be upset about it. But my friend played defensive end his entire career. The entire time I knew him, he was a defensive end and a running back. You know, when you play freshman ball, you play both sides. But he was a defensive end for the duration of high school. And then senior year, they decide, let's change him to linebacker because that's what we think he'll do at the next level. It ended up not working. He was okay, but he wasn't special. And he was special at defensive end. Ironically, he ends up going to the next level and playing defensive end. So it ended up not even mattering, but it is whatever, right? The point is, when you change a guy's position, you run the risk of losing what makes him special. That is my point. And when my friend was in high school, you lost what made him special. You changed him back to defensive end halfway through the year, and you saw the defense get much better because you had the best player playing in his best position. The question becomes, A, does Morgan State even want to do that? I don't know if they're saying we're going to set you up for the next level, so this is why we're going to do this. I don't know. I seen LSU do it with Harold Perkins. He was an impact edge rusher. And what does LSU do? They move him back because they know he can't play defensive end at the next level. And they do that after his freshman year when he's hot as can be. So these things happen, right? Like these things happen on the collegiate level in hopes to prepare people for what they could be. Do you do that with Erick Hunter? He's 210 pounds. I don't view him as a highly graded prospect at that weight. I don't think that he'll be valued as a UDFA as a linebacker. I think that his value in general depreciates as a linebacker simply due to his size. He's a fantastic player. In 2023, he led the conference in tackles. He was one of the finalists for the Buck Buchanan Award winner or award. So you're looking at a player who is an impact linebacker who's not going to play linebacker on the next level. Whether Morgan State changes him or they try to change him in the league, I just do not see him playing 210 pounds. At 210 pounds, I do not see him playing linebacker. So the two choices become put weight on him, but I don't know if that's necessarily the bet because what you get in him is this rangy athletic linebacker. Putting weight on him could decrease those attributes, or you could change him. You could change his position. Now, that's where things get scary because, like I said with my friend, when you change a player's position, you change or you run the risk of losing what makes him special. If you change him, he's going to be a strong safety, maybe a nickel. You're going to put him in more coverage opportunities. There's a drastic difference between operating in space as a linebacker because the expectations are different. We just want to see you operate in space. We want to see that you have good lateral movement. We just want to see traits. But when you talk about putting him at safety, putting him at nickel, he's going to be in position to cover more, and he's going to be asked to do it. And the expectation is going to be different. It's not just being good enough. You have to actually be good now. So I think the conversation changes, but that's where you would put him at 210 pounds. I could put him at a strong safety. I'm happy with that. Matter of fact, Put Erick Hunter at a strong safety, keep him close to the box, let him operate as like a robber, just kind of close to the line of scrimmage, but not as much man coverage, and pack on 5 pounds, maybe 5, 7 pounds, 215, 217 pounds as a strong safety. I'm loving that. I'm loving it. The question becomes, is he able? Are they willing? This is an idea that I'm throwing out there, but you have to vet it. Erick Hunter is 210 pounds. Does he play linebacker in the NFL? I don't think so. So now what are your choices? You can maximize him on your defense, and who knows where that comes from. Because honestly, 210 pounds is small for a collegiate linebacker, in my opinion. So now you ask yourself, do I want to change him somewhere that probably increases his odds of being a valued prospect? And that would be putting him in a defensive back role, whether that's safety, whether that's a big nickel, whatever it could be. Once you move him, once you start talking about moving him, you have to ask yourself 2 questions. Do we think that Erick Hunter is capable? That's the thing. I've seen him play linebacker. I know he can be a fantastic linebacker. Even if he's undersized, I know he can be a fantastic linebacker. If I decide to move him to defensive back, whether that's a big nickel, whether that's a strong safety, is he capable? And are we willing? Because it is a risk that you change a player who has been special at linebacker, move him somewhere where you think is more applicable for his frame, and now he's no longer special. Maybe he's good, maybe he's solid, but he's not special, and that will hurt your defense. These are questions. These are questions. I know I'm repetitive in nature. It's me naturally. I apologize if it bothers you. I really do. But these questions I want to ask multiple times because you have to beat them into the brain, because those are the most important questions. When I look at Erick Hunter, I see a rangy, athletic linebacker, slender linebacker. And that slender part is what we focus on. It ain't going to translate to the next level. I don't like his prospect chances at linebacker. I don't. But what I do like is if he's a quality safety, strong safety, I do think he has good size, and I do think people could value that. Do they do it? Can he do it? Just because Hunter's frame allows him to be just because Hunter's frame slots him in there does not mean that it's the smartest thing to do. Anyway, apologies for that. I just wanted to ask that question and keep putting different spins on it. And sometimes I go a little OD with it. I may have gone a little OD today, but that's okay. That is okay. We're going to push forward, and we're going to look at Caleb Granger, who is the FAMU All-Star pitcher, and he's out for the season. How does this impact the Rattlers? Let's briefly look at that as we continue with Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to briefly talk about Caleb Granger. We're not going to take too much time on it. This was such an exciting show, right? Why I have to end it with such depressing news. But the FAMU pitcher, who was the SWAC Pitcher of the Year in 2024, he's out for the season due to an injury that he suffered earlier this year. He hasn't played since the beginning of April. And this is a move where I don't want to talk too much about the stats and everything. I want to get more into what the impact is. But he did start 3 games, and he did end up winning. He went 3-0 in those games. He's appeared. There we go. I knew there was an A word. I had to go through all of the words real quick. But he did appear in much more games than that. Let's see. Make sure I have the exact number. You have Caleb Granger, who appeared in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games, and he was solid during his time. You know, this is a guy who many people come in expecting him to be great. He was the pitcher of the year. He was an all-division, all-region, or a Division I all-region team member. He was in the Swingman Classic last year. He was all SWAC, obviously. Like, you're looking at a guy who was a stud in 2024. The expectation was for him to be a stud again. The conversation around him was that basically he had a shoulder injury that he felt it a little bit, and then he came back, tried to play, and he felt it again. They got an MRI on him, and he's gonna have, or his, I don't remember if it's his shoulder or if it's just his arm, but he's gonna need surgery. So they wanted to try to go the non-surgical route, and you always want to. You don't want to go under the knife, right? If you can fix this without going into surgery, then that is what you will attempt to do. Unfortunately, that wasn't an option. And for him now, that means that his season is over. And it means that FAMU is going to be without their closer. Like, this was a great pitcher. And when there's clutch moments, you want your great guys up. This is how I view it. It doesn't matter how you performed, right? Let's say he's struggling in 2025, but he's up and down. But when push comes to shove, when you're talking about your biggest moments, you're going to want your best pitcher out there. You're going to want your pitcher of the year. You're going to want a guy that you feel like you can count on. So if he struggles in this game or he gets got here, that's okay. That doesn't really matter in the long run. And I hate to say it that way, but it does not matter in the long run. When at the end of the day, when it's the last game of a series, if it's the SWAC tournament, you want Granger out there, and now you can't have him. You simply can't have him. This is a guy who not only dominated in 2024, this is also a player who was coming into 2025 with a real big set of expectations that were on him. I think he was a preseason All-American, if I'm not mistaken. Make sure I got that right. Yeah, he was a preseason All-American for him. So he's one of the better pitchers. Like, that's what they said. It's a quote from the head coach. And he was like, hey, Caleb is a dominant collegiate pitcher and one of the best to ever wear a FAMU uniform. Like, come on. He said other coaches that told him he's one of the most dominating pitchers that they've seen at our level. So this is what we're talking about, losing in Granger. This is a really devastating loss for them. And I think that it'll come up when you're talking about the end of the season, when you're talking about the SWAC tournament, when you're talking about these things that you want to have clutch players for. At that point, that's when we'll be talking about, hey, if Granger was here, this is where he would be. Now other people have to step up. They had a little bit of a skid mid-April when they were playing Bethune-Cookman. They lost their last game to Valley, but they've gotten right a little bit, and they just won a series against Grambling. Yeah, they just won a series against Grambling. So anyway, we'll be back on Monday. I just want to go briefly on that. It was too exciting of an episode for me to end with a long conversation about this. I just want to talk about the closing aspect. So we'll be back on Monday. Obviously, it'll be a long weekend. Not sure what we'll discuss, but we will get into the biggest stories on next week. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.